Sarah looked straight at my son, her voice echoing in the kitchen I had helped pay for. Honey, choose. Either your mom leaves home, or I go. I stood near the sink, a damp dish towel in my hand. I was 64 years old, a widow of 5 years, and I had just finished cleaning up the dinner Sarah had demanded I cook. My son David sat at the granite island, staring at his half-empty glass of water. 3 years ago, when I sold the home I shared with my late husband David, convinced me to combine our resources. I handed him a check for $150,000 to secure the down payment on this massive 5-bedroom house. The agreement was simple. I would live in the ground floor suite, help out occasionally, and enjoy my retirement. But over time, helping out morphed into something entirely different. I became the live-in maid, the grocery shopper, and the personal chef. Sarah stopped acknowledging my contributions. She treated the house as entirely hers, rearranging my furniture, throwing away my garden plants, and snapping her fingers when she wanted my attention. The breaking point arrived that afternoon. I had quietly taken my laundry basket out of the washing machine, leaving Sarah's designer workout clothes on top of the dryer. I was tired, my knees ached, and I had simply stopped doing her chores. When she discovered her clothes unwashed, she stormed into the kitchen, threw the garments on the floor, and issued her ultimatum. No one asked why she was forcing him to choose. No one mentioned the fact that I had just spent 2 hours preparing the roast they just ate. I did not raise my voice, nor did I defend myself. I just watched my son waiting to see what kind of man I had raised. David rubbed the back of his neck, refusing to make eye contact with me. "Mom," he muttered, his voice barely a whisper. "Sarah is my wife. I have to put my marriage first. Maybe it's best if you find somewhere else to stay." The silence in the kitchen felt heavy, suffocating. I did not cry. I did not scream about the money I had given them or the countless hours I had spent keeping their household running. I just folded the damp dish towel, laid it carefully onto the counter, and walked to my ground floor suite. "Don't take any of the living room furniture," Sarah called out after me. "It fits the aesthetic of the house. We'll consider it your contribution for living here rent-free." Rent-free. The audacity of the phrase almost made me laugh, but I kept my face blank. I pulled a single medium-sized suitcase from the top of my closet. I packed enough clothes for a week, my essential toiletries, my laptop, and a small wooden box containing my late husband's watch and our wedding photos. I left the expensive mattress. I left the oak dresser. I left the television David had bought for my birthday 2 years ago. I did not want anything that tied me to this house. When I rolled my suitcase back into the hallway, David was standing near the front door. He looked uncomfortable, shifting his weight from foot to foot. He reached into his pocket and held out a $50 bill. "For a cab, Mom. Just until things cool down." I ignored the money. I opened the front door, the cool evening breeze hitting my face. "Things will not cool down, David," I replied evenly. "Take care of yourself." I walked out into the driveway and ordered my own ride from my phone. I watched the front door close behind me, the lock clicking shut. I was a 64-year-old woman standing on a suburban curb at 8 in the evening, practically empty-handed. But as the car pulled up, a strange sensation washed over me. It was not despair. It was the sudden, sharp clarity of freedom. I spent the first night at a modest motel 3 towns over. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and old carpet, but the door had a deadbolt, and no one was demanding I iron their shirts. Sitting on the edge of the stiff mattress, I opened my laptop. I had never been the type to play victim, and I certainly was not going to start now. I logged into my primary bank account. David and Sarah thought I lived rent-free because I did not hand them a physical check every month. What they conveniently ignored was the complex web of automated payments I had quietly set up to keep their lifestyle afloat. With a few precise clicks, I canceled the autopay for the house's electricity. I canceled the water bill. I stopped the monthly payments for the high-speed internet package Sarah needed for her home office. Then I navigated to the joint checking account David and I had opened years ago for family emergencies. Over the past 2 years, that account had become his personal slush fund for car repairs and Sarah's weekend getaways. I transferred my entire balance into a secure solo account. Finally, I removed myself as the guarantor on Sarah's premium car insurance plan. I did not leave an angry voicemail. I did not send a guilt-tripping text message. I just severed the financial umbilical cord cleanly and completely. Numbers do not care about aesthetics or ultimatums. Numbers simply reflect reality. When I closed the laptop, my chest felt lighter than it had in years. I possessed a healthy pension from my husband's career, my own retirement savings, and a fierce determination. They wanted me gone. They got their wish. Now they were going to experience exactly what it cost to maintain their perfect life without my invisible safety net. Within 2 weeks, I moved into a bright one-bedroom apartment in a quiet community 20 miles away. It had a small balcony overlooking a community garden, a kitchen just big enough for one person, and walls that belonged entirely to me. My phone had started ringing 3 days after I left the motel. The first call was from David. I let it go to voicemail. He sounded confused, asking why the internet had been shut off. 2 days later, he called again, panic edging his voice, asking about the electric bill and the empty emergency fund. I blocked his number. I blocked Sarah's number as well. I befriended a woman named Martha, who lived across the hall. Martha was a retired nurse with a sharp sense of humor and a practical outlook on life. When I told her a brief version of why I was living alone, she just poured me a cup of tea and nodded. "Some people don't know the value of a foundation until the house starts sinking," she observed. I settled into a routine that belonged solely to me. I woke up when I wanted to. I cooked meals that I enjoyed using a small, inexpensive dining set I found at a local thrift store. I started volunteering at the county library 3 mornings a week, organizing community book sales. For the first time in years, my money stayed in my account. I was no longer bleeding cash to fund Sarah's designer shoe collection or David's expensive golf weekends. My savings began to grow again. My stress melted away, taking the persistent ache in my shoulders with it. I built a new life, brick by brick, using nothing but my own resources and boundaries. I did not need an apology from my son. I just needed peace, and I had finally found it. 2 years passed. The seasons changed, the community garden bloomed and faded, and I turned 66. I was healthier, more active, and genuinely happier than I had been in a decade. I occasionally heard fragments of news through distant family members. David and Sarah's life, it seemed, was not the flawless painting they wanted everyone to believe. Martha, who occasionally shopped at the high-end grocery store near their neighborhood, spotted David one afternoon. She told me he looked exhausted, pushing a cart with a broken wheel, his clothes looking a bit worn. Meanwhile, Sarah maintained a facade on social media, posting pictures of expensive dinners and weekend trips. But I knew the math. Without my initial down payment and the $2,000 a month I used to silently contribute through bills and groceries, their mortgage was a crushing weight. Lifestyle creep is a silent predator, and they had invited it right into their living room. I never reached out. I never checked my blocked messages folder. The boundary I set the night I left remained absolute. I had accepted that my son made his choice and I had made peace with mine. Then, on a crisp Tuesday afternoon in October, my doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on a kitchen towel and looked through the peephole. My breath hitched slightly. Standing on the welcome mat, shifting his weight nervously from foot to foot, was David. He looked 10 years older than his actual age. The tailored suits he used to wear were replaced by a wrinkled jacket, and dark circles shadowed his eyes. I unlocked the door, keeping the metal security chain firmly in place. I opened it just a few inches. "Hello, David." David forced a tight smile. "Hi, Mom. It's been a long time." Your place looks nice. He tried to peek past my shoulder, clearly expecting me to unhook the chain and invite him in for coffee. I did no such thing. I stood comfortably in my hallway, my hands resting in my pockets. What do you need, David? His smile faltered. He rubbed the back of his neck, a nervous habit he had carried since childhood. Can I come in? We really need to talk. It's important. We can talk right here. I replied, my voice calm and steady. He sighed heavily, dropping the pretense. We're in trouble, Mom. The mortgage rate adjusted, and Sarah's business idea didn't take off like we planned. We are drowning. I know Dad left you a substantial life insurance policy. We just need a loan to catch up on the arrears, just to get us through the year. I looked at the son I had raised. He wasn't asking how my health was. He wasn't apologizing for kicking me out into the night. He had tracked down my address solely because his wallet was empty. I cannot help you, I stated simply. Mom, please. We could lose the house. The house you helped buy. You mean the house you chose to keep me out of? I corrected gently without any venom. My finances are structured for my retirement, David. I do not have a slush fund for your mortgage. You and Sarah will have to figure it out. I didn't wait for his counter-argument. I softly pushed the door shut, listening to the solid click of the deadbolt. I walked back to my kitchen and finished making my lunch. I knew Sarah would not accept David's failure. 4 days later, she ambushed me. I was browsing the produce section at my local supermarket selecting tomatoes when a shadow fell over my cart. Sarah stood there gripping a designer handbag that cost more than my monthly rent. Her jaw was tight, her eyes flashing with a familiar entitled anger. You really think you can just turn your back on your own son? She demanded, her voice loud enough to turn the heads of 2 nearby shoppers. I calmly placed a tomato into a plastic bag. Hello, Sarah. Don't play games with me, she hissed, stepping closer. David told me you refused to help. You have the money. We know you have it. How can you be so selfish? We are family. If we lose that house, it's going to ruin his credit. We might have to move into a terrible apartment. Then you will learn how to budget for a terrible apartment. I answered, placing the bag in my cart. She stared at me aghast. You are punishing us. Because we set healthy boundaries 2 years ago, you are trying to destroy us. You told my son to choose. I reminded her, keeping my tone perfectly conversational. He chose. I respected that choice. I am simply continuing to respect it. I pushed my cart past her. She followed me for a few steps, her voice rising in pitch. You owe us. We took you in. I stopped, turning to look at her expensive purse, her pristine manicure, and the sheer panic hiding behind her anger. I didn't argue. I didn't explain the down payment again. I just turned my back, walked to the checkout lane, paid for my groceries, and left her standing alone in the produce aisle, arguing with the air. A week later, Martha found an envelope taped to the lobby door with my name on it. Inside was a handwritten note from David. It was an invitation to meet him at a neutral location, a diner halfway between our towns. The note claimed he wanted to apologize properly, just the 2 of us. Against my better judgment, but fueled by a quiet curiosity, I decided to go. I drove my modest sedan to the diner and slid into a vinyl booth near the back. 10 minutes later, the bell above the door chimed. David walked in, but he was not alone. Sarah was right behind him, carrying a leather binder. I did not get up to leave. I simply sipped my black coffee and watched them sit across from me. You said just the 2 of us, I noted, looking at David. We are a team, Mom, he mumbled, looking down at the table menu. Sarah wasted no time. She flipped open the binder and slid a printed spreadsheet across the table. Look, Rachel, we are willing to let bygones be bygones. We've crunched the numbers. We are willing to let you move back in. The basement isn't finished yet, but we can put a bed down there for you. In exchange, you cover the property taxes and hand over a lump sum from your pension to catch up the mortgage. It saves you rent and it saves our house. It's a win-win. She leaned back, crossing her arms, looking incredibly proud of herself. They had not come to apologize. They had come to offer me the privilege of paying their debts while living in a concrete cellar. I looked at the printed spreadsheet. They had factored in every penny they assumed I had, treating my life savings like a checking account they forgot they owned. I didn't feel anger anymore. I just felt a profound sense of pity. I pushed the spreadsheet back towards Sarah. Then I unzipped my simple canvas purse and pulled out a small, worn notebook. I opened it to a page I had bookmarked 2 years ago. "Let's look at my numbers," I said quietly. I turned the notebook around and slid it across the diner table. David leaned in, his brow furrowing. "What is this?" "That is a ledger of what it cost me to live rent-free in your house," I explained. "Monthly electricity, $400. Groceries for 3 adults, $800. Internet water streaming services, and the payments I made directly to your emergency credit card." I tapped the bottom line. $2,400 a month. That was the invisible safety net you threw away when you handed me a $50 bill and locked the door. Sarah's face drained of color. That can't be right. You kicked out your primary investor." I continued, my voice steady. "I do not need a basement. I have a beautiful apartment. I have peace. You made your choice, and now you have to afford it." I stood up, reached into my wallet, and placed a $10 bill on the table to cover my coffee. "Mom, please." David pleaded, his voice cracking. "We have nothing left." "Then you will start over," I said, just like I did. I walked out of the diner, leaving the notebook on the table. They sat there in absolute silence, staring at the numbers, finally realizing the true cost of their ultimatum. 2 months later, the massive 5-bedroom house officially went on the market. It sold quickly, but at a significant loss. Without my money to prop up their lifestyle, the illusion shattered entirely. Martha told me they moved into a cramped 2-bedroom rental near the highway. According to community gossip, the strain of actual financial responsibility had fractured their perfect image. Sarah constantly complained about the lack of space, and David was working a second job just to pay off the massive credit card debt she had accumulated. Their marriage was suffocating under the weight of the reality they had created for themselves. I did not celebrate their downfall, but I did not lose a single moment of sleep over it either. True peace does not come from watching others fail. It comes from knowing you are no longer responsible for their survival. I spent my Tuesday afternoon sitting on my balcony, a warm cup of herbal tea in my hands. The community garden below was vibrant with late autumn colors. I watched a neighbor water her tomatoes, the simple, rhythmic motion incredibly soothing. I had given my son everything I could. When he threw me away, I did not beg to be kept. I gathered my dignity, secured my boundaries, and built a life where I held my own keys. No one could tell me to leave. No one could treat me like a burden in my own space. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for a child is to let them feel the full, unfiltered impact of their own choices. I took a sip of my tea, feeling the warm sun on my face, completely and beautifully free. Sometimes the hardest part of loving someone is stepping back and letting them feel the full weight of their own decisions. Rachel didn't yell, she didn't beg, and she didn't plot revenge. She simply realized her own worth and refused to be a guest in a life she was secretly funding. The biggest takeaway here isn't about getting even, it's about self-preservation. We often confuse unconditional love with unconditional tolerance, but they aren't the same thing. You can love your family from a distance while still protecting your peace, your finances, and your dignity. Boundaries don't make you a bad person. They just mean you finally understand that your well-being matters too. If Rachel's story resonated with you, or if you've ever had to make a difficult choice to protect your own peace of mind, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment down below and share your experience. This community is all about supporting each other.